Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. Now, I'll be honest, I thought we were done for the day. I had packed up my recap station, and then a brawl spilled out into the streets. Recchia fights back against the TikTok that Viall made after the podcast he did with Greg Grippo, basically saying that Rachel was just performing and that she didn't like Avon and she was disingenuous the way she smiled on the way out the door. Nick calls out Rachel. Rachel responds. And does she respond ever? This is a good one, folks. We're going to get into this in 1 second. Do me a favor, follow me on Instagram at DNeals. I'm going to be posting a stand-up clip right after this at DNeals. Also on Patreon every morning, patreon.com/Dave Neal for private behind-the-scenes bonus content. And also, if you want some non-Bachelor news, I've got what might be the most interesting story I've made in a long time on the Dave Neal Show. Brett Favre, NFL legend, exposed in welfare fraud scheme. And when I talk about grifters, this is exactly what I talk about. Somebody who does what's right for them, goes against all of their principles, and is just in it for money, totally exposed. That video is crushing it over on the Dave Neal Show. Go check it out. Now, in this video, I'm going to lead with the response from Rachel, and then we're going to find out how we got there. So we are just going to share the lead. She says, all you're doing here is encouraging a space to kick me when I'm down based on assumptions. She says a few other things, and we're going to get into that briefly. Let's just recap what Nick said on his podcast, then what he said on his TikTok, furthering, his thought that she's just not into it. And then afterwards has the gumption, and you got to love Nick the salesman. You got to respect this. He goes, hey, come on the podcast and explain yourself. And she's like, why? So you can just kick me while I'm down? Kick rocks is what she says. Very fascinating stuff. Oh boy, it's heating up, guys. It really is. NBA Jam style. Let's just see what he has to say. By the way, Nick gives Greg Grippo the chance to follow his lead. And Greg Grippo says, no, I didn't really see it that way. Have a watch.
And I think that just almost made a disconnect. The reason why I think it was a performance, I sent you guys that screenshot. She's literally smiling at Avon after they hugged, as if like to me, that smile was a smile that she was supposed to wait until she got back to her hotel room.
And this is the smile he's talking about. We'll play this video in a second, but that's the smile he's talking about. This like, bye. So anyway, let's finish what he has to say.
Knowing that she just had Tino left. And like that, to me, that smile was this like, she's literally smiling. Like she's looking at Avon, smiling at him. He looks distraught. And it was almost like she was just like,
let me see this photo.
People, I have a ton of empathy for Rachel, knowing that she has to she's got to break up with these guys before she can get to the person she wants to be with. And she's going to have to lead people on. But I think it's really kind of shitty that she's trying to make these guys feel bad, like it's their fault for like trying to check in or just trying to communicate to her about like their insecurities or about the timeline.
Now, look, I get it. You make an hour-long recap video, you have to fill in the gaps. I totally understand that. When he asked Greg Grippo what he thinks of the situation, Greg Grippo goes, I don't really buy it. Kind of, that's the deal. We don't need to replay that. Catch that on my last video. What's interesting, though, is Nick's been in this scenario, and he knows how it works, that it's not just the fact that, like, Rachel's not just, like, walking out. You know, it was probably, like, a 45-minute-long conversation. They probably edited things. She was probably, you can be sad and still smile. Those people that say, oh, that person didn't care, they were smiling, or what we do with laughter, it's and smiling when we're being in a fight or flight moment, it's not as simple as saying, oh, they must have felt good. Well, laughter can be a defense mechanism. It can be a whole bunch of different things. Hold on, we just lost it there. Hold on a second here.
Did she block you?
This always happens here when we get into TikTok. It's just a mess. So we're going to watch this in a second here. The TikTok that made Rachel feel the need to respond. And then I'll read some of your comments right after it. But yeah, my thought with Rachel is this. I've been critical of the way I knew Rachel was going to do some of the things that Clayton had done to her, which is lead her on. Now, Rachel might not have been as egregious, but they both, and I think Rachel would admit to this, it's no fault whatsoever. It's just this is how the show works, that you lead people on blindly, not knowing who you're going to choose. So there's a final three. You lead them all on, knowing one's going to win over the others, and then the other two might say, oh, you led me on. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. So Clayton thought for himself, and he didn't put the other people, the women's needs, ahead of his own. He was kind of like, me, my journey, my journey, my journey. Rachel's essentially done the same thing with Avon, where she's like, why are you yelling at me? Like, I thought I want a ring at the end of this. And it's like, very well, but also you have to respect that Avon wants to make sure he's doing the right thing. Now, if I'm in Avon's shoes, give her the ring. It's free. It's a $100,000 ring. Take it and ask questions later. But that's just me. So here we have Nick sort of doubling down from what he said earlier, but putting it in, he probably, and again, Nick, I think his producers probably don't know to tell him when something's a bad idea, or they just let him dig his own grave. I don't know. But of course, anyone who's been on the show or anyone who knows the show, deep enough knows that, what you see is not always what actually happens. So here's Nick's TikTok, and then we'll share Rachel's response.
All right, here's the thing. We don't get to win every breakup. Being the Bachelorette or the Bachelor is an incredibly hard position to be in.
This music.
You're trying to find love for yourself with the pressures of an engagement, also while trying to make a TV show. And the bummer part is like when you connect with someone at any point, whenever that is, like say maybe after night one, like Tino, you don't get to just end the show, even though often you kind of wish you could, which results in you unfortunately leading people on. This is moments after Avon and Rachel broke up, and she's smiling. Moments after she, essentially accused Avon of leading her on because he wanted to talk through, getting engaged. And
now I'm going to pause here just because we have some licensed music. I don't want to get the content rights tripped here. Now, he's operating under the assumption that she's leading Avon on and she knows it's going to be Tino all along. Some commenters would disagree with him. Nick knows how edited the show is. He managed to jump to conclusions about how she wanted to win the breakup, and that's why she was smiling. He couldn't just say that was his opinion, and he's speculating, though. He speaks so assuredly about things he doesn't have any facts about. That's why he just irritates. Geez, be a little more responsible with your platform. That sounds like a mother. Johnny, be responsible with your platform.
And owned up to the fact that, emotionally, he wasn't entirely sure if he was there yet, but wanted to be with her. And she was just, not having it and decided to end it. And I recognize this look. This is a look of a person who's finally down to the person they want to be with. She just forgot to wait to smile until she got back to her hotel room.
Again, that's assuming that her smile is for Tino, when the smile could be for a litany of things like, burying a relationship. Sometimes the smile isn't a happy smile. Sometimes it's a sad smile. It's just this feeling like goodbye for the last time. It could be a whole lot of things. I think assuming, as we know, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, but I think when we assume things, it's a dangerous place to be. But at the same time, this is Nick's platform. This is part of engagement. We're here talking about it.
She's proud of herself here. And honestly, I get it. But my problem is that she wanted to win the breakup. So instead of just ending it because she knew she wanted to be with Tino, she tried to make Avon feel bad. Essentially use the kind of pressures of the Bachelorette against Avon. And before we get...
Now, you'd have to be a certified psychopath, and I mean that clinically, to make someone feel bad so you could win the breakup. I think that happens. I don't think it's on purpose. I think in a lot of fights, especially when we're on a lower level of enlightenment, that doesn't mean Rachel's on a low level, but maybe with how she breaks up. God knows I don't know how to break up with anybody. You know what I mean? I can't even get rid of my chiropractor without, you know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm moving on. My old hairdresser I had just ghosted. I don't know how to say, whatever. But my point is that I don't think there was any sinister motivation by Rachel. I think Rachel's operating with the purest of intentions, even if she's not coming off that way. I think we need to live in a world where we assume everybody's trying the best with the information they have. I know that sounds kind of boring and unproblematic to say, but I don't think Rachel was trying to break up with him so she could quote unquote win, even if maybe that's what subconsciously was happening.
Too hard on Rachel. We've all done this, right? We all want to win breakups. So when we decide we want out of a relationship, sometimes we have to be willing to just be the bad guy. We have to let them be mad at us. It's not fair to make that person feel bad for something they have no control over. And that is your feelings towards them. So if you want out of a relationship, just say you want out and say you're sorry and let them be mad and let them hate you and let them think you're the worst, because it'll help them move on. But just don't try to make them feel like they're the bad guy for something that you don't want to be in anymore.
Bingo. So there it is. Okay. Well, so Nick had a few points, but I think he wedged his point into this scenario under a false assumption that that's actually went down. He could be right, but like we always say, a broken clock is right twice a day, unless you're on military time, and which is right once a day. But either way, the comments, we want to get to know the real you. Okay, so that's in response to this here. So Rachel said, Avon and I had a nice moment at the door after something very difficult for both of us. I was trying to hold it together. And then Nick responds, the people want you on the pod. We want to get to know the real you. It will be a great conversation and a chance to share your point of view. And then, let's see. Someone says, homie, why would she want to be interviewed by you after this? Nick says, because people able to answer tough questions, be vulnerable and accountable for their choices, always come out looking better after. See Clayton. And then Sarah said, you just totally dogged on her for views, then said, hey, come to my podcast. What? All right. And then other people said, I bet but your very publicly accused first, ask questions later approach just rubs me and others the wrong way. Go on Game of Roses, Nick. The people want it. And then you can maybe stop bullying contestants to maintain relevancy. It doesn't look good on you. I'm not agreeing that Nick's bullying her. I think he's just got a strong point of view, but it obviously wouldn't build trust for Rachel to want to reward Nick with the equity and bandwidth that would come from a hit episode. Because if Rachel and Nick on a fight on his channel, it would be a hit episode. My suggestion for Rachel, save it for when you can write your tell-all book and cash in on your story. Don't give anyone else your story. So it kind of goes back and forth. Marcy said, didn't you recently say that you shouldn't judge these people by what you see on TV, that we don't know what really happened? Oh boy. Okay, and then of course, so Rachel also said this part, all you're doing here is encouraging a space to kick me when I'm down based on assumptions. And then Nick said, I'm sorry you're down. I definitely can relate, but part of this show is the opportunity to discuss what we see. The hope is we have a chance learn. All right, so nothing like TikTok to get rid of all grammatical rules. And then 2 other comments. Nick is gross. I hope Rachel does every pod but his. Yeah, can you imagine? Rachel's like, I'm on 77 different podcasts today, not named Vialls. Nick knows better. He knows that smile wasn't moments after the breakup, and they more than likely had a lot of time between the breakup and the goodbye at the door, but he's chosen to try to make her look like an ass. And again, I don't think Nick had sinister motivations. I think he found something. He found an angle to discuss, and then he's kind of brings it out. It's actually very similar to when he thought he was slamming Katie Thurston, and then everyone was like, "You're not slamming Katie Thurston. She blocked you because X, Y, and Z." And this is kind of the same thing where he thinks he's got this. Putting my finger where his is. He thinks he's got this like gotcha moment, and Rachel's like, that ain't it, bro. That ain't it. Let me know what you guys think. I'm on Patreon tomorrow morning. If you guys want to have some behind the scenes conversations, patreon.com/Dave Neal. And I'm also on Instagram. We're going to be posting some stand-up comedy clips there. I'm in Monrovia tomorrow night, Thursday night, if you want to come catch a stand-up comedy show in California. We'll talk to you guys in a little bit. Bye. Click here if you want to watch my new Brett Favre video on The Dave Neal Show.